Hello everyone, welcome to MMA Wired. Today let's cover a few recent developments in MMA. Recently, Dana White admitted that he was thinking about signing Jake Paul to the UFC. Why does Jake Paul even want to be in the UFC? Has he baited Dana White and Conor McGregor into a feud? In addition, UFC accidentally revealed upcoming fights, including Nate Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev. Which fights can we expect in UFC 276 and UFC London? Stay till the end, and we've got you covered. It may come as a shock to you, but UFC President Dana White just admitted that he was thinking about signing Jake Paul to the UFC.
And I made an offer to him. He was talking. I made an offer to him, and obviously he didn't want to do it, so yeah, it's all good.
But why, you may wonder? That's a perfectly legit question. So White and Jake Paul have been beefing for around a year. In the beginning, it was just Paul trying to get a reaction out of Dana White, but it seems like White has finally taken the bait. But this feud isn't a recent one. So initially, Jake Paul and his brother Logan Paul were social media celebrities. By 2018, they entered the boxing world. In 2020, it was announced that Logan Paul would be taking on Floyd Mayweather. This is when the feud seemingly started. To a purist like White, the idea of someone like Logan Paul fighting one of the best boxers we've ever seen was unpalatable. So White went on to insult people who were interested in seeing the Paul brothers in the ring. Jake Paul then went on to make a name for himself by defeating former MMA fighters Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley. Dana White predicted that Paul would lose these matchups, but surprisingly Paul ended up winning. Naturally, Jake Paul started to trash talk Dana White.
If you steroid test me, then I want to steroid test every one of your fighters. Ooh.
The deal with Jake Paul is that he isn't just your average celebrity or Twitch streamer. You have to commend him for his willingness to take a pounding. It's not like he hasn't trained in boxing. Basically, he is tougher than the average celebrity, and he is willing to try out new things. Things took an interesting twist when Paul started to campaign for better pay for UFC fighters.
Fighter pay? I didn't even realize.
Bro, this is the most important thing that I think we need, me and you.
Yeah.
We need to drive it down everyone's throats, mainly Dana White. And
now there's been some controversy regarding the way UFC compensates its fighters. Paul was outspoken about this issue, and it probably irked Dana White quite a bit. Then Jake Paul upped the ante by claiming that White was a drug addict. He also created a Dana White diss track. This diss track is pretty popular with over 4 million views. During this period, Dana White maintained a studied silence. He didn't want to bring attention to Paul and his antics. But at last, White broke his silence and proposed that Paul randomly drug test him for cocaine over the next 10 years if White could, in turn, randomly drug test Paul for steroids for 2 years.
Jake, you never responded to the challenge. You publicly stated that I use cocaine. I do not. So I told you you could randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. I believe that you're a cheater, and I believe that you use steroids. So I want to randomly steroid test you for the next 2 years.
So it seems like Jake Paul actually got under Dana White's skin with all his shenanigans. Once Paul knew that he had Dana White's attention, he proposed to fight Jorge Masvidal on the condition that White improve the compensation given to fighters. The feud then simmered down. Paul then started to diss Conor McGregor, saying that he would easily be able to KO McGregor. Now McGregor has been on hiatus after breaking his leg at UFC 265. Once McGregor started to train again, he let the world know with some training footage. Jake Paul decided to capitalize on this by calling McGregor's handiwork an embarrassment and telling him that your chin is wide open with no head movement for the problem child right hand of God. So basically, Jake Paul has agitated Dana White and Conor McGregor. But we think McGregor is way too big even to be bothered by this petty drama. Now that we are done with the history, let's get to what happened now. So Dana White dismissed Jake Paul's antics as just an attempt to gain some attention. During an appearance on the Pivot podcast, he stated he, Jake Paul, wants to fight here because this is where the money is, regardless of what he says. Interestingly, this isn't the first time that non-MMA fighters have entered the octagon. Wrestler CM Punk had fought against Mickey Gall and Mike Jackson during his 4-year-long stint at the UFC. But CM Punk had trained at an MMA academy for around a year before his first appearance. Next up, let's look at the recent round of leaks surrounding UFC 276 and other upcoming events. So during the latest episode of the Pivot podcast, the camera lingered on a seemingly confidential UFC board. Now we don't know if this was leaked purposely or whether it was just an accident. But this board revealed some of the plans that the UFC has for the upcoming months. Dana White has always talked about this mystical board containing details of all the upcoming cards. This is the first time we have caught a glimpse. So what does the future hold for us MMA fans? Let's see. UFC 276 is slated to be held on July 2nd, 2022. We could see Israel Adesanya take on Jared Cannonier. Amongst the middleweights, this looks like a great fight. Jared Cannonier stated earlier in April that he would be Israel Adesanya's toughest test to date. Now, Jared Cannonier has been on Israel Adesanya's horizon ever since Adesanya defeated Robert Whittaker at UFC 271, so it's likely that this fight will go ahead in UFC 276. In addition, we're also likely to see Khamzat Chimaev in action against Nate Diaz. Now, Chimaev is fresh off his victory against Gilbert Burns in UFC 273. Till a few weeks ago, everyone was expecting Chimaev to take on Colby Covington next. However, it comes as no surprise since Nate Diaz has been raising a stink about how he wanted to leave the UFC and asked for a release from his present contract. Diaz has been lobbying for a fight against Dustin Poirier, but the UFC management has been silent about that, despite interest from both fighters. We expect this to be an exciting bout since Diaz previously rejected a pairing up against Khamzat Chimaev since he felt it was beneath him to fight someone who wasn't in the top 10. But given Chimaev's run of victories, it seems like this will be a great fight. Furthermore, it does seem like Sean O'Malley will be taking on Petro Munoz. Earlier this year, Sean O'Malley had dropped hints that he was due to fight Petro Munoz. Next up, let's talk about UFC's return to London. UFC London is due to be held on July 23, 2022. Previously, UFC had announced that the card would be headlined by Curtis Blades and homeboy Tom Aspinall. Now we know that Paddy Pimblett will face off against Otman Azayatar. Paddy Pimblett appeared during the previous edition of UFC London and picked up a submission victory over Kazula Vargas. Another possible draw on the card is John Jones vs. Stipe Miocic. Rumors regarding this fight have been circulating for months. Dana White also came out and stated that this fight should happen. Now, John Jones recently moved from light heavyweight to heavyweight, and he has been edging for a fight for around 2 years now. At first, Jones was supposed to take on Francis Ngannou sometime in 2021, but that bout never materialized. Now, Jones has been stirring some drama, claiming that he was willing to wait even till September for his fight against Stipe Miocic. It seems like Miocic had requested the fight be pushed back to September since he was not at his peak, so it is possible that this fight may be postponed. And that's a wrap. So it seems like there's a lot of gripping MMA action to look forward to. What do you think about Jake Paul's MMA prospects? Which fights are you looking forward to in UFC 276? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.